Guys, Tracy back with another process video. I'm back. I was unable to both scrapbook and unable to sit at my computer to make process videos for the past, well, it's been more than a week because I had just had a little neck strain issue going on. I'm okay and I'm feeling much better now. So this layout that I'm going to show you is something that I did over the course of the week. Just whenever I felt a little bit up to it, I would come down and do a little bit of work, but for the most part, I wasn't able to do very much. So I'm starting with an idea that I had as I was laying on my couch trying to get better, that I really wanted to play with brayers a little bit more. So I'm actually starting in my art journal with a page, just a plain page, and I added some gesso. And I thought about this idea of, I've been using brayers on a lot of my layouts lately, and I just thought, is there some way that you could use gelatos with a brayer, because I love my gelatos, and I just thought that this might be a cool way to put color on a page. And so I was pretty sure it wouldn't work without water, but I thought I would just do it just to see how it looks. So I added some water to, I didn't have my regular work mat out, so I just put it on a piece of deli paper and learned not to do that. But I really like how this looks. The deli paper just wasn't waterproof enough, so some of the water went through it. That's okay, it's not a big deal. I was just kind of not quite prepared for doing something messy, even though I had the idea and I knew it was going to be messy. I just wasn't thinking straight. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more tidy up because of it, but that's okay. I really like how this looks. And so I am not going to use purple because that's not something that I wanted to scrapbook today, but it really gave me a good sense of how it's going to look. So here I am. I had to take out my white Tri Art palette anyways. I should have just done that from the beginning. I'm going to put a very thin layer of gesso over my plain white American Crafts cardstock. This time, for once, I'm working on the textured side. The past several layouts that I've used with a brayer, I've used the smooth side, and this is just plain American Crafts cardstock. I am adding gesso, and what that does is it acts as a primer, so it gives something for my media to stick to, but it also, my mixed media that is, but it also keeps the page sealed in so that any water that I work with will remain on the surface of the cardstock instead of sinking into it. So my camera really doesn't like white surfaces, so that's why it's going a little wonky on you there. As long as I keep something else in frame, it should be okay. So I'm taking this really old photo of my older daughter that I just saw because my computer was actually updating and I couldn't access my pictures. And so I just grabbed this. It was already printed in my box of photos. And I'm taking several different shades of these gelatos. And I'm sorry that I don't know the shades. They're not written on the tubes, and I just have a multi-pack that you saw there. That's all the gelatos that I have are the ones that come in that pack. So I just made a little bit of a rainbow effect. It's not in any particular order, except that I tried to keep the pinks together and the yellows together, although it's a circle, so they'll meet on the other side of that roller. And also I'm going to be rolling it back and forth, so I'm hoping I'll get some pretty oranges out of that. But the reason I'm using a brayer instead of just, swiping it on, I'm thinking I'm probably going to have some extra because I only want to put gelato in the very center of this page. So I just took out a piece of watercolor paper to put some of my extras on. So see how I just really wanted it on the center, but I have all this extra ink or color, it's not ink, it's gelato, on the side. So I thought I would just use up that extra instead of just putting, using my baby wipe and throwing it in the garbage. I thought I'd get another base out of that. So that's a piece of 12 by 12 watercolor paper on the side there. So this is what I'm ending with. And the reason I decided to use a brayer is that I'm just really in love with the look of a brayered background these days. I've been using it on several layouts and in my art journal, and also on my jelly prints. But I just really love the crisscross back and forth rectangular color blocked look that you get with it. And I like how it kind of wears out as you do it. And so you get some really faint colored areas and some really vibrant colored areas to balance off with that very geometric look that you get with the brayer with all those different swatches of rectangular color. I am adding some mist splatters just to balance off the graphical look and make it look a little bit more organic. And so I used some Heidi Swapp Pretty in Pink or Pretty Pink? Pretty in Pink? No, Primrose Pink, sorry. And I also used some Taxi Mr. Huey's, and now I'm using some Opaque White Mr. Huey's as well. Now I'm going to put my Tri-Art palette away, and I just have a piece of, what is that called that you bake with? Parchment paper that is attached to it with packing tape. So now I'm using my Stampin' Up! Heat gun just to dry off all of those splatters. They do take quite a bit longer to dry on a gessoed surface because they pool up on the surface instead of if I had splattered those onto cardstock or pattern paper, they would have soaked right up, especially on the pattern paper. Cardstock has a bit of a coating on it, so it takes a little bit longer for the mist to dry, but much longer when you use gesso, which is kind of the purpose of using gesso, so you kind of can't have it both ways. If you want it on the surface, it's going to take a bit longer to dry. And if you want it to soak in, then it's going to have a different look. So I'm realizing that my swatch of color is actually quite a bit smaller than my photo. I would have rathered have some color sticking out at the top and at the bottom. And I went to my drawer of die cuts that I usually keep really nicely sorted into these cases, but that you guys have asked me about and I talked about on a recent Scrap Chat. But here I am, and I realize I have a whole bunch of packages of die cuts that I haven't even sorted yet. So I have to get on that because I do like having them stored by color, because right now I'm only looking for pink and yellow and maybe a tiny bit of purple because there's that purple in her lunchbox that she's holding. And I'll talk about the photo when I come to the journaling part. So I like the idea of having this be mostly pink and yellow embellishments on this layout, and then have like a hit of purple, maybe every here and there, or maybe just there behind the frame. I'm thinking that frame might hold my journaling, although it's not going to in the end. And that first set of die cuts that I was looking at were from Dear Lizzie. And now these ones, I'm pretty sure these ones are from My Mind's Eye, although I can't remember the collection. Hang on and I'll find it out. I'm pretty sure it's Millie and June, which is the set that has lots of mother and daughter and sister related stuff in it. And it had really pretty purples and pinks as well as some peach colors. So now I also have the Pink Paisley Fancy Free collection, which was Paige Evans' first collection. And I'm just going through that as well because there's lots of pinks. There's actually quite a lot of multicolored pieces in that. And I'm trying to not use a whole lot of multicolored pieces. I'm trying to keep it to mostly pink and yellow and just that hit of potentially purple. So these are those cases that I was talking about that I was expecting myself to be looking through. Now, one of the problems with keeping my die cuts in this way is that I don't know who made a lot of these. I can remember some of them, but many of them I'm not going to be able to. So I'm very sorry that I can't tell you who made each and every piece that's on this layout, but I can give you a sense. Some of the watercolory looking ones might be from Amy Tan, or they could be from Dear Lizzie. Certainly that Paisley one that's on top there is probably from Amy Tan. And yeah, so now I'm looking through, this one might be from Amy Tan. That certainly looks like an Amy Tangerine camera there. And look, it's got the yellow and it's got the pink. It's quite a large die cut, so I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to be able to pull off using such a large embellishment on this page, but I'm going to try because I think it's really cute. And I especially like, and those drips are not dry yet, so that's why I'm kind of running my fingers together and thinking, oh no, I hope I don't get yellow and pink all over everything. What I really like about it is that if I can figure out a way to make it go right beside my daughter's photo there, right the way it was a second ago, it almost looks like the camera's pointing at her. I had this glassine bag on my desk and I thought, well, I'll throw that behind the photo for a little bit of interest instead of adding a more formal mat. And now I have this idea. This is a different time, so I don't know if you can tell by the cut of the videography, but this is a whole other day. And it could be the same day because I wear this sweater a lot, especially when I'm sick or if I'm cold or not feeling well. It's my cozy sweater. So here I am, and I had this idea about making one of these little circle loom-like things. And so I'm starting by folding my circle in half lots of different times so that I can get the spacing right. And then I cut it so that there were, I think, eight different slits just around the outside of that piece of paper. Now that paper is just from my scraps, and it is from Ellie's Studio, the Little Moments collection. And I'm not sure where I went. Oh, I went to get some beads because I thought, I actually saw this on Pinterest. It was not related to scrapbooking at all. It was like about, I was actually looking up something else completely different. It wasn't even about crafting. I can't remember what I was looking at on Pinterest. I think it was something computer related. And I just saw this come up in my feed somewhere, and it just showed this little as a children's craft activity. And I thought, well, I could do that. You don't have to be a child. So I decided to give it a try. And I'm actually not planning on scrapbooking in this occasion. I'm more just I just came down here to see how this would work. And I had a feeling that if it did work, I might put it on this layout. So that's why I recorded this process. So this is me just kind of trying to figure out if I can make a nice embellishment using this technique or not. So it may or may not work, and I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing. But you saw me, I just used washi tape to attach the white thread, and I'm just using regular embroidery thread. And I just made it go through all those slits as you saw while I was talking. And now I just tied a knot, and I'm actually tying the knot right on the front, and I suspect I'm not going to be able to see it. I'm looking at my beads here. These are jewelry making beads, and they're way too small. They're never going to go through the large needle that I have here. And so I'm thinking maybe I don't want to use beads after all anyways, because part of me is, well, I'm sick, and so I don't really want to persist. If this is hard, I'm going to give up easily because I'm not feeling well. And and also I think it's going to look quite nice without the beads anyway. So on the kids version of it, they used large wooden beads all throughout, and they were making them quite a bit bigger as well. And so because mine is smaller, and that embroidery floss is very floppy, so I had to thread it. And in the kids' version, they just weaved the thread with their hands through the spokes of the circle. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. I know that it's on fast forward and it's difficult for you to see, but if I made it slow, it would make this video quite a bit too long. So you're going to see me do this. This is just my rough version just to see if it works. And you're going to see me do this, and hopefully I'll be more in frame as time goes. I'm looking a little bit ahead, and I can see that I do end up moving my hand. There you go. So I'm just going in and out of the spokes of that wheel. And if you go, so because I have an even number of spokes, if you just keep going in and out and in and out, it won't have a woven effect. It will just kind of keep on showing 4 of the spokes and keep on hiding the other 4 of the spokes. And so you're going to get these 4 white lines that go down the center of your flower. And so what I'm doing is every once in a while, I'm getting my pattern off. What I mean is I'm purposely going under 2 instead of just going under 1. And that's going to help me not have that patterned look of just always going under and over the exact same ones, which is not really the look that I'm looking for. I'm not entirely sure that I explained that well, but you're going to see me make a couple more of these flowers, and hopefully it will make more sense if it doesn't make sense already. So by mixing up the pattern just every once in a while, it's allowing me to not have those 4 lines down the center. like not down the center, but kind of radiating out from the center is what I'm trying to say. And I think that those little specks of white that you see in the center from where it was making a pattern, they kind of look like seeds of a flower. And so I actually quite like the look of that. So I just tied a knot to finish this off, and I left some of the spokes exposed without weaving around them. And now I'm going to start another one, but I'm not going to be able to finish it if I remember correctly. I'm trying to think about how can I fold this so that I can get an uneven number, like an odd number of spokes. And I couldn't figure out a way to fold it in a way that would help me with that. So this is a whole other day because I had to stop because my back was hurting. And so here goes another try. So this version is going to have an odd number of spokes, which is going to leave me with this kind of strange looking thing in the middle. But that's okay because in a second, I promise I'm going to move it so that you can see it, I hope. I'm going to thread my white thread this time, which allows me to have an odd number of spokes. I just made the last spoke kind of go through the center by using that needle. And then so one of those spokes doesn't have a copart. So you know how as you're making the spokes, you kind of go from one side to the opposite side, making the spokes go the whole width of the flower. But the last one just ends in the center because it doesn't have a counterpart. Otherwise, it would be even, and I need it to be odd for this to work. So I'm using a different kind of floss too. This is not embroidery floss. It's just some weird string that was in my sewing drawer. And I can't thread it with the needle because it's such a weird thread. And so I'm going to play around with a couple of different ways. I could fold it and try to make it go under and over each of the spokes this way, but that's getting to be a little tricky. So I just have to kind of I tried to do a whole bunch of pre-weaving and then I thought maybe I could pull it through, but that wasn't quite working. Now, because I have an odd number of spokes, I can just go with my pattern and just keep on going under and over and under and over and under and over the whole way around the wheel. And I do not have to ever go under 2 in order to not have the straight lines of white going through the center of my pattern. And so the odd number of spokes gives you a different look because you can and it's also a little bit easier because you can just keep on weaving. Now I'm getting tired of the problem of the thread being too loopy to go through. And so I just put a piece of washi tape to make it stiff at the end. And that is helping me with my weaving. And the other thing that I'm doing is I'm only going under one at a time instead of going under and over a whole bunch and trying to pull it all at once. That just doesn't actually save any time because it just creates a lot more tangles and whatnot. So this strategy worked for this flower. It's been a while since I've narrated a video, obviously. And I don't want to bore you with this process, so I might just kind of cut some of this out. So here we are skipping forward to the point where I feel like my flower is quite big enough, and I'm just going to do one last, and then I'm just looping it into one of the slits that the spokes are looped upon, and using some washi tape and just taping it off and cutting it off like that. And then I'm just going to bend up the edges of my flower to make it look a little bit distressed, and it's just slightly different than the other one. I really like it, actually. It's quite cute. So now I'm using another circle punch, and I think it's 1 7/16. The other circle punch that I used was a 2-inch circle punch, that blue one that you see in the screen. And I'm pretty sure I'm making this one be odd again, I think. We'll know in a second. So here's the process of making those spokes again. And note this one is even. I quite liked the look of the little dots in the center that I got when I used it even. I thought about using this wire thread, but I thought, oh, it's going to take forever to weave with that because it's just so thin, right? So then I thought this yellow baker's twine would make a really nice string to weave here. So I am going to force it through my little needle. It didn't want to go, but I made it go. And I'm tying it so that it ties together the center so that all of those spokes are all held together with the knot in the yellow twine. And I am, as you weave, you're going to not see that knot because it's just going to be tight in the center. So as I get towards the outer limits of this weaving, I'll give you another little hint. So because this one is even, I have to go over, under, and I'm going to end up with, very definite. See how the 4 spokes are definitely emerging as the only ones that I'm going under. So now I went under 2 in a row so that I could make the opposite spokes come out to the top now. And I really like the look that I'm going to get from this. You're going to see some, like a little pattern evolving from the white part as well. It won't just be the yellow thread going around and around in a circle. You're going to see a little bit of a pattern with the white spokes as well. See that? And I really like that. And you don't get that when you do the odd number of spokes with the basic weaving. So it gives you 2 different options, 2 different looks. As you get to the center, what you have to be mindful of is you can't pull the thread quite as tight. You see I'm using my thumb there to hold it so that when I pull my thread, I'm not pulling it straight across, because I don't want this to look like a spider web or like a geometric shape with square edges. I want it to be very rounded, and the further you get out, the less rounded it looks. The more you get towards the outside of the circle, the less rounded it will look, unless if you're careful to maintain that circular shape by holding onto it with your thumb so that you're not pulling that thread exactly taut. It has to be a little bit loose. So I'm going to take another one, and I think this one is going to be odd as well. Let me have a look at it here. Yeah, this one is odd. This one is very tiny. I think I used my 1-inch punch for this, or my 1 1/4 inch punch. Yes, it was my 1-inch punch. So far I've used a 2-inch punch, a 1 3/8 inch punch, and a 1-inch punch. And I like to have a variety of different sizes, and so that's what that's all about. And and so there we go with that one. Is that one even or odd? I can't quite tell. Oh, it's odd, I think. So here again, I'm thinking this is another chance for me to use this metallic thread. It's actually not even thread. It's like wire, but it's purple wire. And I decided to go ahead and use this very thick string on this tiny little flower. I thought it would have good balance that way, or lack of balance. Like I thought it would look kind of just unexpected and interesting because it's such a tiny flower and the weave will be so large because of the giant thread. And because it's odd, it has an odd number of spokes. I hope it does, because I'm talking about it as if it does. It makes for pretty easy weaving. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, it has 7 spokes, so that is definitely an odd number. As I'm getting through it, because the washi tape is kind of big and bulky, I have to kind of pull back some of the weaving that I've done in order to make space. I'm kind of threading it almost underneath of some of the stitches, but then by the time I pull it out, the thread goes back to where it's supposed to go. So if you're making these, you might want to, especially for the tiny ones, make sure that you're weaving it pretty loose so that you have some wiggle room, especially if you're not using a needle. If I was using a needle, it would be pretty easy. So there again, I just wound my thread into one of the spokes that was not one of the spokes, but one of the slits that was made for the spokes, and that gives me a little out for my thread. So it's an easy ending for my weaving. And then I'm just curling up the edges so that that one matches. And now I have a total of 4. So I need an odd number. So here we go again. My fifth punch is 1 1/4 inches, and it's a Stampin' Up! Punch. And so this will give me a nice odd number of flowers, and they're all slightly different from one another, but they use the same basic. I realized that as I was narrating this, as I was videotaping this, that I might have a hard time narrating. So I thought I would just show you with a marker where I was cutting so that you could see the length of the cuts and how they're spaced. And basically with the odd ones, I just eyeball it. So when it's even, I fold up the circle lots of different times to make the even slits, but when it's odd, I just eyeball it and I aim for about 7. Yep, they're all 7. All of the odd ones are 7 and all of the even ones are 6. Wait, no, they're 8. The even ones are 8. So there's my little wheel, and I'm going to use this really soft color of yellow. It's almost like a cream, but it's not. It's yellow. It's definitely yellow. But it's very soft, softer than the other colors of yellow that are on the page. And so I thought that this would be a nice starting point. So here's another alternative for starting. I thought I would just show a bunch of different ways that you could do this. And so instead of tying a knot around the center like I did for all the other flowers, I tied a knot in my thread and just came up through the middle. I just poked a hole with my needle and came up through the middle and started my weaving that way. And this one is going to be a basic weave. I'm just going to weave the whole way around the whole thing. And that means no changes in the pattern, and I'm not going to see any little white bits showing through, if I do it properly, that is. So I'm going to skip through this process for you. So it was basically a straightforward over, under, and now I'm ending it by just pushing my needle through the paper into the back in a place because there was too much spoke exposed. Too much of the spokes were exposed there for me to go inside of one of the spokes. With the thread, it would have looked weird. So I just poked a hole and I used tape to hold it together at the end. So there are my 5 flowers. I love them. They're just so cute. And I love that I made them myself and that they coordinate with my page perfectly. So now I have to think about what on earth am I going to do with these? So I also noticed that I had, oops, sorry about that. Get your head out of the way, Tracy. Okay, so I had this Martha Stewart really decorative punch. It's an edge punch, and I don't know what it's called. It might be called decorative lace or something like that. I've had it for a very long time, and I haven't used it in ages, like maybe 5 years or more. So I thought I have to use this punch on this page because it's so pretty and delicate, and I wasn't sure if you would have seen that, so I just did that little demonstration in case you didn't know. So I'm just going to add one more layer. I thought about just taking off that glassine bag, but I just like the little bit of lift that it gives. It casts this nice little gray shadow behind the photo, and I like that. So I'm going to leave the glassine bag, even though you see such a tiny little bit of it. Just going to rough up that lace edge, that lace border trim. And I decided the one thing that I've known from the beginning is that I want Smile to go right here, kind of beside her legs. That's all I know at this point. And I thought I'm going to put these spoke flowers that I made in a little splay, I guess, maybe underneath of the camera, and give this layout a little bit of horizontal weight to it, which I'm not using any pattern paper on this one. I don't think I use any. Oh yes, I do towards the very end, other than what's on the flowers. So instead of running a horizontal rectangular strip of pattern paper behind this photo, I'm going to put these embellishments in a horizontal rectangular shape alongside the photo. I'm just going to layer this frame with these 2 pieces. Those are all from the Dear Lizzie, some collection from not too long ago. I don't know which one. And then I'm pretty sure that camera is from Amy Tangerine. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, because I very well could be, because that was just in my set of loose die cuts. And again, I really like how that cute little casual die cut piece looks like it's pointed at my daughter, kind of, if you use your imagination a little bit. And then the smile just kind of ties it together. And those flowers, I'm using large Zots pop dots as a adhesive here. And I want the large one, I did adhere the large one upside down, but I will fix it. You will magically see it. I fix it off camera in between doing two different things. And so at some point those hearts will go right side up. Yeah, so I really like how those flowers look spread out like that. I just wanted to make sure that the two dark pink ones were separated by one of the lighter ones. And I added that little clear clip that's from Studio Calico. It's like a wire clip. And I used double layers of dimensional adhesive from Stampin' Up! On the ILE part of Smile. And I'm just kind of playing around with what else I can add here. And I'm thinking that my title will be in black foam letter stickers and that it will go below the lowest sitting of those spoke woven flowers. So it'll be kind of off to the side. I had that sun, what does it say? Sunshine little card that I thought made an interesting little layer behind my photo because it has pink and yellow, and I like it popping out like that. And whenever I use a clip on something, I like to have a reason to have a clip. I don't like to just have a clip, although you can. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It just bothers me on my pages, so I decided to put something behind the photo so it looks like that clip is holding it in place. And it does cover up some of the color that I was wanting to show from the background, but at some point I'm going to move it down a tiny bit, but it does continue to cover up some of that color. I really wish I had been more liberal with my brayering at the very beginning, but I didn't know how large this layout was going to turn out to be. So I'm adding that little phrase there, that little pink bit says Mummy's little girl. And she was so little here. She would hate if I called her that now, but back then she really was my little girl. So I'm adding love here to balance off with the smile. It's a similar font. It's not exactly the same. It might be from the same set though. I think the smile is from Dear Lizzie, and the love very well could be from the Millie and June. I'm not entirely sure. So now I grabbed some letter stickers because, as I mentioned, I wanted to use black foam letter stickers, and I used this wonderful from Amy Tangerine. The sticker set is called Twins. I don't know why it's called that. I don't know exactly, but it's called Twins. It doesn't have like doubles of anything that I know of. It has just, I don't know, it's just kind of like a cool casual brush script foam letter sticker. And so I wanted to use the Wonder, and I thought I would put full of, and I made the Wonder go into a little semicircle. And that's something that I've been really wanting to do with foam letter stickers, and I always seem to forget. So I decided to just do it this time because that way, you know, I'm thinking about it. So now's the time to do it. Maybe I'll do it more now that I've done it once. I got that kind of trace there in my brain to remember to do it that way. Once you do something once, it's always easier to do it again. So I just have to kind of fiddle with it a little bit because I want full of to fit in between that high part in the N and the A sender in the D. It's not really an A sender in the N because it's not meant to be there. It's just because it's so messily written that it looks like an A sender, but it's not. It's not an H, it's an N. So I just had to scooch those over a little tiny bit to make full and of be obvious that they're two different words, and it was looking kind of like full of instead of full of wonder. And now I want to put that little piece of vellum. I think it's a Studio Calico Kit Club item that Stephanie Hart gave me. I could be wrong, but I think that's what that came from. And I'm putting some lines so that they work their way around that sticker and fit in the little space in the imaginary circle that Wonder is sitting on. And here I am journaling. I did this last night, actually. It says, when I see this pic, it's hard to believe this little girl has grown into the amazing girl that Liv has become. And that's kind of a very awkwardly phrased. I'm not saying that to be critical of myself. I like my journaling to be just kind of off the top of your head. I think I've mentioned that before. But not only is it a little bit awkwardly phrased, but it's also, and I use those little black hearts to fill space whenever I draw a line too long by accident. It's also not exactly what I wanted to say about this page. So that was last night, and I left my video camera on by accident for a very long time with all the lights off and everything. So this is this morning. This morning I came in with a couple of new ideas. You see I've got a whole bunch of new supplies over there to the right that I took out last night, and I went to my green stash, and although early on in this page I was talking about having only pink and yellow and maybe a tiny hit of purple over here and there, here I am adding some green leaves because I felt like these flowers needed some leaves, and I really didn't want them to be pink or purple or yellow, so I'm adding some green. And this is a Studio Calico paper. It's a scrap. It's quite an old piece of paper from my stash. And I used a Martha Stewart leaf punch. I would love to have another leaf punch. I'm at the phase in my scrappy life where I don't really want many new punches, but a leaf punch is one that I'm going to be on the lookout for because I seem to be using flowers all of a sudden. And I'd like to have a plain leaf, like a kind of like an oval looking, pointy oval leaf punch. So if anybody knows of any pointy oval leaf punches, let me know and I will get one. So I put 2 leaves over here on this big circle because on this big wheel flower, spoked wheel flower, I don't know what I'm calling those. Pardon me, because it's a bigger flower and I felt like it needed a little bit more substance beside it. I'm taking these gold phrase stickers and I'm just placing them. I put one above the die cut piece there that says Mummy's Little Girl, and then I'm going to place them in 2 or 3 other random places. So this one says Today's the Best, and I just tucked it in between the flowers. And I'm using these just to fill in some of the space between the flowers. I don't want to fill it up all the way. These are from Imaginess. Oh, those gold ones are from DIY Shop, which I believe is a crepe paper collection. These are from Imaginess, and they are actually part of a summer themed set. I'm just taking out the non-summery ones because this was actually, even though she's wearing a sundress, this was her first day of preschool and it would have been in September. I thought I just wanted to add lots and lots of words, and I pulled out my chit chat from Tim Holtz and decided not to use it. I thought the gold and the pink were enough. These are glitter puffy foam stickers from Citrus Bliss from Pink Paisley. They came in a Scraptastic kit last year, and I thought they made a nice little accent to fill in some of the pieces. And I put one down here as well, just below Wonder. And sorry that that's out of frame, you'll see it in just a second. So another idea I had last night, I just couldn't keep on scrapbooking because my neck was acting up, but I had all these ideas as I was turning off my camera. Well, I didn't turn off my camera, I left it running. But one of them was to put this edge of black and white paper on the far left edge of my project, which so far nothing has been going on over there. And what inspired me to do this was a little bit Irit, because she has been doing this and kind of over to the side, and at least on one of her projects that I watched when I was not feeling well. And I really liked how it looked. But the other reason that I was doing it is because you see that there's this very strong diagonal line in the photo that runs behind my daughter. It's the line where the gravel meets the cement pad of our garage. And I thought instead of having this be like all over to the side of the photo and have it be more of a rectangular layout, I thought maybe I'd make this be a diagonal layout that follows the diagonal line in the photo. So I purposely tore that paper so that there was a chunk of it that's bigger up at the top. And now I'm going to remember how I said that I didn't say the exact right thing in that journaling? And so now I have another opportunity to add more journaling. And it's going to take me a few minutes to work it out. I thought about writing it on the photo itself, no, I don't want to do that because it's not going to be legible enough. And then I thought about writing it kind of like turning the layout sideways and writing it right along where the pattern paper is, like kind of all along, so it would be at a right angle to the rest of the page. And I thought, no, that's going to kind of draw your eye too much over to that space that I kind of just want that to be white space. So I thought I would put these X and O's because they don't really mean anything other than hugs and kisses, but it's a nice way to kind of mirror the circular bit that's down at the bottom that says full of wonder where the title is, and then have some journaling under it, just like there's journaling under the full of wonder. And it's taking me a little bit. I lined that full of wonder journaling with my ruler, and so I'm feeling like I need to use my ruler here, like these lines need to be straight, and I'm making two mistakes here that I'm going to work myself out of, and I'll show you. I'll try to explain what I did. So first, I am ghost writing, which means I'm not writing at all. I'm ghost writing to see if the things that I want to say will fit in these spaces, and it won't, so I have to revise what I'm saying. And I'm just winging it at this point. It says, we used to have so much influence over her interests and passions. Now she is her own person. I had a longer sentence written on that Post-it note there beside me, but I couldn't get it in there. So two things. I tried to write on top of this card. I tried to have my journaling go so that it overlapped onto the card, and that just looked bad. So I'm going to cut it off of the card and put the card in. Luckily, there was a little bit of extra space at the top of that, so I was able to cut it. And now I'm going to have to go and fill in the word passions because it's only partially there. Maybe I did that already. And then I had to hand underline the last line, and I'm going to fix that in a few minutes. But first, I'm feeling like I need to put some more stuff around the X and the O because there's so much stuff on the other side, right? So I thought about putting one of those foam hearts from Pink Paisley that are elsewhere in the project. And meanwhile, that large flower keeps popping up. See, I did flip it so it's right side up now. Those hearts are facing the right way. But now it keeps lifting up. So I just added an extra pop dot there to keep it down. I feel like I need something more than just a white heart up there beside the X and the O's and the journaling that's up there. So I went back into my Millie and June die cuts, and I'm looking for something that's similar to some of the other stuff that's already on there, which is why I went into Millie and June, because there's a couple of things from Millie and June on there. That polka dotted heart beside the word love, for example. Also, the heart that's under the word love is also from Millie and June. And that gold circular heart above the O and wonder is also from Millie and June. So I went through all of that and couldn't really find anything that works. So I thought I would make myself a little something. And I used this Ellie Studio paper because it's already on the page elsewhere. It is, of course, in that large spoked flower. And I thought, no, not two hearts there, just the one. So this heart looks a little bit like a punched heart for me, which makes sense because it is, but I wanted to finish it off a little bit and have it go a little bit better with some of the other embellishments that are on the page. And so I'm adding a white halo to it to make it look like it's a manufactured die cut piece from a set that might be elsewhere on the page. And I know a lot of times people spend time, they tell me that they cut around their stickers to get rid of the white halo. And here I am adding a white halo. So I guess to each their own, right? Sorry that I forgot to zoom out. I zoomed in so that you could see me using that gel pen. It's just a white jelly roller. My new favorite white gel pen. And when I glued it on, what you missed there, I'm going to zoom out in a second, I think, but what you missed there was when I glued it on, I messed up the outlining. So, so what you're missing now is that I'm going back and I'm just, with my freehand, I just made all of the underlining on my journaling thicker on both sets of journaling. Now I'm taking some Coats upholstery thread, and this is like much heavier thread, and it holds its circular, like it's wound on a spool, so it holds that circular shape much better than regular thread does. So I've been using this for the last several years instead of regular thread because I just find it easier to work with. And I kind of like the graphic look that it gives. It doesn't give quite as messy a look, or maybe sometimes a bit messier look than regular thread has. But what I really like about it, and why I'm using it in this place in particular, is, and I just put a little staple to hold it together, and then I have something that I can glue to my project. I just glue the staple that holds the string. I just glue it underneath of something. And so what I like about it is that because it holds its shape, it's quite stiff. So it gives me a little bit of dimension to my project. It doesn't just sit down on the page, it stands up. And I really wanted the thread to be standing up in this case to give it kind of some softness and, I don't know, just some extra interest. I'm using some Tombow Mono Multi here to put that third bit, little bundle of thread. And most of that thread stayed underneath my layers, so I just had to tilt it a little bit so that more of it was showing. So now I have the thread in 3 different places, mostly amongst my flowers. And I wanted to also sew in 3 or 4 different places. So I'm starting by sewing on that gold heart embellishment that's above the letter O. You'll see it in a second. And now I'm sewing on that purple star that's over just below the R in Wonder, just below my title. And now I don't have my pressure, like my thread tension proper. And so sometimes when I pull my project out, I run the danger of pulling all of the thread out, and I just need to change the setting. I know how to do it, I just am too lazy, and until I already start working on something, I'm like, oh right, I need to do that. So I meant to actually run sewing all the way along the diagonal striped paper, but I completely forgot to. That was one of the main things that I was going to sew. These were just accents that I was just going to add, but I completely forgot to do my main sewing. Now, because my thread tension was so low, I absolutely have to tape the backs of these, or this thread is going to come off if you just like breathe on it. So I used some washi tape to cover up the back, and I actually pressed quite hard on it to make sure that it was really stuck down. I wish I had run the stitching along the diagonal line there. I not the diagonal line, but that straight line on the edge of that pattern paper. So now my very last step here is to add some more splatter. I already have splatter on my background, but I've covered up a lot of it. I like how it's peeking out in different places, but I want more because I ended up making this design be quite a bit bigger than it was going to be. It extends to both corners, both opposite corners of this page. It's really hard to splatter on a curled up piece of paper and not have it drip. So I'm trying to tape it down with, at first I tried temporary adhesive, but it wasn't strong enough. So then I just rolled up a piece of washi tape to hold it down. And now I'll use the same piece of washi tape to hold down this side, although it's not curling nearly as much. And if I had left it at that, I quite like that smaller amount of splatter. I'm going to add more. And when I add the pink splatter, I do feel like it needed some pink splatter up there. But when I add it, I add way too much. But that's just the nature of splatter, is that you just can't control it. I want to set my yellow ink before I add, and I'm using again Taxi by Mr. Huey's for the yellow. I want it to set a little bit. That's why I brought out my heat gun, because I don't want them to mix if they overlap. Although it's not too bad to have orange on this because there is orange in her dress, and it did mix a little bit in the background anyways. So here I just kind of keep on splattering and keep on splattering, and I just think that there's just a little bit too much, but it's okay. It's all right. And now here I'm going to use, I don't want to splatter with the nozzle that comes with that Liquitex gold ink, but I also, I'm just going to use a paintbrush. I've been using my Heidi Swap nozzle for splattering, and I just need to stop doing that because it doesn't make good sense. I have a whole bunch of paintbrushes right beside me, so that's what I'm going to use from now on. It just makes it's more obvious. I don't know why I was doing something so silly. Anyhow, I just cleaned my paintbrush with a baby wipe, not with water, and so I guess I'll just always use that paintbrush for my gold mist. And there you go. I think it's done now. No, it's not quite done. Was I going to add some hearts? Oh, you know what? I forgot to add those hearts, but that's okay. Remember I took out those puffy hearts? I think I didn't add them, but I don't think it really needs it. I think these splatter are really enough. So here's what this top corner looks like with the extra journaling with the thicker lines on it, just to make it, once I made a mistake and made one of the lines be a little shakier and thicker, I just thickened up all of them. And they didn't need to be terribly shaky, just not quite so ruler drawn looking. I love how the gold splatter looks amongst the flowers and how it landed on top of some of my embellishments, and I even got a little splash on the photo, and I really like how that looks. And the diagonal look of this really picks up on that diagonal in the photo, and I like it because it accentuates the direction she's looking. She's sort of looking off at somebody who's behind me as I'm taking her photo, and I just really like how I believe that this layout accentuates the photo in the way that I really wanted it to, because it just, oh, she's just so cute. She was so adorable back then, and so she's also still very adorable. But I'm just pointing out here that even this space that has negative space, because I gessoed my paper, there is a little bit of interest here, and even the torn paper white on white gives you just a little bit of interest over there. I didn't want it to be stark, like I forgot about that corner, and so having the whole page coated in gesso, even though I only intended to paint on the center, really helps that kind of have it all look pulled together and tied in. I'm going to show you some photos, and I can't think of anything else that I wanted to say other than that I really wanted to accentuate that diagonal line. As soon as I noticed it in the project, I just thought, I need to make this page be diagonal as opposed to rectangular the way I originally intended. And I think that gives it a lot more energy and makes it much less about all these flowers over on the side, and kind of pulls your eye from the one chunk of black where the X and O's are down to the other chunk of black where the title is. And my daughter is right smack in the middle of that diagonal line, and I think it just works perfectly to keep these handmade flowers, which I do love. It keeps them from taking over the page as being the dominant force. So thanks so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this one, and have a really great scrappy week.